Hello and welcome back to Anywhere But Here, episode 305. My name is Tom, and again I'm here on my own this week because I was doing spoilercasts all of last weekend. This one again is another spoilercast, but I'll get on to that in a second because I need to do the introductions. You can find us on abhpod.com, where if you scroll down there is an Amazon banner. If you click through that Amazon banner, you'll go to amazon.co.uk, where you can spend all your money on Christmas, which is coming up, and we get 5% of your total basket spend. Whatever you spend, we get an extra 5%. You don't pay an extra 5%. We just take it away from Amazon. They give us 5% of what you spend. So that's nice, isn't it? If you don't want to fund Amazon and you don't do your shopping that way, you can become a Patreon, where you hear things like this spoilercast as soon as they come out. For just $1, £1, whatever your currency is, you get access to spoilercasts, which are these, where Ant and I have seen a film, or one of us has seen a film, and we talk about it at length, and hopefully it encourages a bit of conversation between us all. You get After the Podcast podcasts, which are specific and exclusive only to patrons, and best of all, you get the main episodes on your own feed without these laboured introductions on them, which is the best of all the offerings that we give. We also, when we play video games and things like that, we or react to trailers, we pop them up on Patreon before they go live on our YouTube channel. You can get in touch with us on all the social media platforms. We're on Twitter at ABHpod, Facebook.com/ABHpod, and we're on YouTube.com/ABHpodcast. You can also email us at abhpod@gmail.com, just in case you wanted to not have your stuff out there for the public to see. As I said, this is a spoilercast, and it's 3 different films this time round. This is a catch-up, basically. Things that I've been going back to the cinema for a while now and watching these films and wanted to talk about them, but Ant hasn't been going back to the cinema, which, perfectly fine, doesn't matter. It's up to every individual as to what they do. I just love going to the cinema. So I thought, there hasn't been a lot of content recently out on the main feed, or even as well as the Patreon. So here we are. I'm going to talk about 3 films. I'm going to talk about A Quiet Place Part 2, Black Widow, and Free Guy. All very different films, and very different conversations to have about them, I suppose. But yeah, if you feel the need, obviously you can get in touch and talk to us about them, talk to me about them if you want. Wherever you feel comfortable doing that. I'd love to hear what you think of these films after you've listened to my take on them. So, without further ado, here they are. Enjoy. Hello patrons, it's me, Tom. I'm back again to do another spoilercast. Actually, this is probably going to go out before the other ones. That kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what I've been doing this morning. Yes, I'm going to start that again. Hello patrons, it's me, Tom, and I'm here to do a spoilercast for you today. Not of 1 film, not of 2, but 3. 3 films that I've been to see in the past 4 months that frankly... Oh, a pigeon has just bumped into my window twice. That's great. Yes, I've been to see a bunch of films since cinemas opened back up earlier on this year, because I like to patronise my local cinema. I enjoy seeing films on the big screen, and I pay for a monthly pass, so why wouldn't I? But the thing is, it's one of those things. These are spoiler casts. I like to be able to talk about them with Ant, but Ant hasn't been going to the cinema because, it's one of the things he doesn't feel comfortable doing, and that's perfectly fine. But I kind of waited and thought, well, there hasn't been a lot of content on the Patreon in the last couple of months, and so I thought I would make up for that by releasing a bunch of spoiler casts on the films that I have seen. it's just to give you a little bit, just because I feel bad that you guys haven't had a lot of content recently. And also, I want to talk about these films. These films are, I enjoy talking about films. They're good fun to kind of pick apart and either trash or celebrate. And here we are. So there are 3 films going to be talked about on this particular episode. One of them is A Quiet Place Part 2, which came out back in June. The other is Black Widow, Marvel's Black Widow, which came out in July. And the third one is going to be Free Guy, which came out back in September, I believe. But all these films are now out on general release. So this episode will probably also go out on the main feed fairly soon as well. Because, again, Ant and I have been a little bit like ships in the night recently. And, there hasn't been a lot of content out on the main feed either. One of those things. So I'm gonna start talking about them now. Let's start with The Quiet Place Part 2, seeing as it's now the oldest film on the list of 3 that I'm talking about. And also one of those rare things that, I have done, which is go to see what is essentially a horror film in the cinema. It doesn't happen very often, so But what happened was I didn't go and see the first film, A Quiet Place, when it was released a couple of years ago. I waited until I was on a plane, on a work trip. Probably would it have been 2019 or would it have been 2018? I can't quite remember. But I decided to watch it on a plane because I'm, as you know, a pussy. And I don't like jump scares, and this film is all about silence, and so when the silence is broken, it's going to be incredibly loud. I chose to watch the first one on a plane and instantly regretted not going to see it in the cinema. It's such a great film, that first A Quiet Place. And I was worried about A Quiet Place Part 2, but I also read a few interviews with John Krasinski and Emily Blunt saying that there was no way they were going to do it unless it really stood up and equaled, if not surpassed, the first one. And they had a lot, it's basically their film. Like they wrote and acted, and John Krasinski directed it. And it's the same with this as well, John Krasinski has written and directed this one too. So it's a personal mark of quality, I suppose you could say. And so I thought, well, I trust these guys. They made a brilliant first film. I don't think that they'd want to mess up the legacy of that first film as well by making a subpar sequel. So fuck it, I'm going to go and see this one because I missed out on the experience of seeing the first one in the cinema. And I'm glad that I did. I mean, the film itself picks up basically on the final couple of shots of the first film, so you can essentially watch it back to back with the first one, which I think I'm gonna do as soon as I can. And just go straight through from the start of the first film to the end of the second film, because it is just one long continuous story, and they bleed into each other, which I think is a really cool idea. So you get the kind of the final monster being destroyed by the is it Millicent Simmons' character, the daughter? There's that pigeon again. Fucking hell. So Reagan is the daughter's name. Yeah, so she's killed the final alien in the house at the end of Quiet Place with her cochlear implant wired up to a microphone and an amp. And then Emily Blunt shoots it with a shotgun. That's the opening scene of this film. Then we flash back to before the events of the first film, probably years before, because I think it was set like 3 or 4 years after the original invasion. It was like day X hundred and something. And the whole family is at a baseball game in the middle of the town that they live in. And it's just weird because the whole of the last film you spent kind of with this entirely or almost entirely silent subplot. No, it's the main plot. It's about everyone being quiet because these aliens can hear you. They can't see you, but if you make a sound, they know exactly where you are, and they come and kill you. So to have this, like, you know, this mini, I don't know what they call it. I can't remember what they call it, but like junior baseball is being played with the one of the sons, the older one, Marcus, I think it is. And everyone's there, the whole Abbott family, Emily Blunt, John Krasinski, and the 3 kids. And there's also various other people that they obviously know from around the way, including Cillian Murphy's character, who's listening to the radio. All of a sudden, like meteors or whatever, meteors, asteroids, whatever you want to call them, start to kind of enter the atmosphere. And one of them lands not close to, but there's that pigeon again. What the fuck is going on? They want to talk about this film as well, clearly. One of them lands not too far away from the town, and everyone starts to panic because, you know, it's a scary thing. Everyone leaves the baseball field, everyone starts driving home. And as people start to panic and start driving away from the scene of this meteor strike, they're attacked by an alien. And obviously we've seen these aliens in the first movie, but it's terrifying, these things, because there's lots of noise everywhere. They are going after everyone. John Krasinski and one of the sons, I think, are split up from Emily Blunt and the other 2 children. Emily Blunt's character and Evelyn and Reagan are cornered in a pub by the looks of things with lots of other people. They are then, the silence is pierced by someone having a screaming fit, and then the alien bursts in and starts to kill everyone. They escape through the back door. They eventually find their way back to or is it the other way around? Maybe it's the dad. I can't remember. They eventually find their way back together again, but they're, you know, I mean, it all hell is breaking loose. There's like, you know, runaway buses where the driver has been killed. There's people kind of being thrown through windows. There's cars crashing into each other. There's aliens running around the place, killing people. It's horrific. And then it just cuts. And obviously, and then we find the Abbott family. They're leaving their home. You know, this is after the events of the first film in which the youngest son is killed. They have another baby in the middle of this horrific situation that they found themselves in. And in the end, Lee, John Krasinski's character, has given his own life to save his family. So yeah, their home is not safe anymore. It's been trashed. They don't really want to stay there because, let's face it, why would you? So they go. They know that there are other people around the valley that they live in that are alive because they communicate every night or so with these fires which we saw again in the first film. So they go off in search of other people to kind of be around. They, after a day of walking, they kind of enter an old kind of industrial complex, possibly some sort of smelting factory by the looks of it, and it's got a kind of fenced off area. They have to duck through a chain link fence that with a tear in it, and obviously there are kind of sides. They go beyond their own little kind of self-made path, like all the paths that they made throughout the years that they were living in this horrifying dystopia. They were putting bags of sand down, which muffled their footsteps through the woods. And they've actually gone beyond this, so they're having to be really careful about where they kind of place their feet. Yes, so they get to this industrial complex. They have to crawl through this ripped wire fence, and obviously, one of them catches the fence on a piece of their clothing, which sets off some kind of what would you call it, improvised alarm system, which is like a bunch of bottles and cans that like swing down from a place where they were kind of, on top of the fence. You're also seeing them through the scope of a sniper rifle as well. So they're being watched by someone who has a gun trained on them. And clearly, they've set off this alarm. There is an alien in the vicinity because you hear it roar. They have to run to find cover. As they're running through, the boy, Marcus, steps into a bear trap. And oh my God, you can't blame him for screaming. It's horrific. Absolutely horrific. One of the creatures comes along. Luckily, the mother, Emily Blunt, Evelyn, and the daughter Reagan managed to kill the alien, which is just as this character with the gun is about to shoot Marcus, because he thinks it would. Well, I assume it's because he thinks it would be kinder to shoot him than allow him to be eaten. So you're not quite sure of this particular character's intentions. They managed to get away into the steel foundry, because obviously just because one has come along and is dead doesn't mean there aren't more in the area. The guy with the sniper rifle grabs them, because there is another alien chasing them, and takes them down into a kind of soundproof underground hideout. And it is Cillian Murphy's character, Emmett. He's basically got a setup where he's down in the smelting area, and there are two giant boilery type not gas chamber, but like almost like smelting chambers or something. They're like massive ovens, and you can get inside and lock the door, and sound can't escape. And there are towels or something blocking the massive metal locking mechanism that otherwise would make loads of sound. And that's important. That comes back into play later on. It turns out that Emmett has recently lost his entire family, and he's a friend of theirs, obviously from the baseball game. But he says, "You can't stay here. Like, you've got to keep going. I can't look after you. I'm just sitting out my days here until I die, essentially. Like, I don't want to be responsible for anyone else." And they're like, "Oh, okay, fine. Well, we'll just rest up for the night. Maybe, see to Marcus's leg." I mean, he needs medicine, so they need to go and get medicine from the town, essentially. Now, there's a radio in this little hideout, and the song Beyond the Sea, the Frank Sinatra song Beyond the Sea, is playing on it. And Emmett says that this has been playing continuously for about 4 months. And so the daughter, Reagan, decides that, well, maybe this is a hint that survivors are somewhere nearby with a radio mast and are sending this out there as a kind of clue, somewhere beyond the sea. Maybe it's on an island somewhere. So she reckons that if she can get to the radio tower with her hearing aid and stick her hearing aid into the radio frequency, she can broadcast that noise that kills the aliens, so that other survivors can kind of weaponize the signal, if you like, and maybe they've got a chance of hitting back, even if it's only in their local area. So she decides that they say that it's not worth doing. It's too dangerous. You can't do it. And so, being the rebellious teenager that she is, she breaks out of there in the night and goes on alone to look for this theorized island. She doesn't know. She's just taking a leap of faith, I guess. And here again, we've got the typical, she's walking along a railroad track. She has to pass, there's a abandoned and crashed train on the tracks. And for some reason, she decides that going through the train is a good idea rather than just going around it, which would have been my particular choice. However, I think one of the reasons that she does do it is she knows there's going to be a first aid kit on the train, and she has to walk through the train to get to the carriage with the first aid kit. There's a scare. I think there's a decomposed body there somewhere, a little jump scare. But there is an alien that boards the train as well, and it heard something that she did, possibly when she reacted to the corpse, I think. She's trying to get the first aid kit, and just as the alien is closing in on her, Emmett kills the creature. He's been on her trail since they realised that she'd gone. But he's not necessarily there to bring her back home. And again, you're not quite sure. He's not the most talkative. He's not the most emotionally open character there has been. And you're not quite sure what his intentions are, really. So that kind of adds to the sense of tension in these scenes as well. So they camp out in a station building overnight. He says, like, he eventually, she's so confident that she can do this that he's like, right, okay, well, I'll help you try and find this place, but if there is no place, we have to go back because your mum and your brother are worried about you. So, so they go to sleep. She wakes up in the morning and her hearing aid has been taken, as has all her provisions and her gun. And she starts to really worry and freak out because obviously, Emmett's a lying, treacherous piece of shit. However, he's only gone for a little while and has come back with more provisions so that they can carry on for however many days it might take. And then they carry on their kind of mission towards this island. In the meantime, Evelyn's realised that Emmett isn't coming back with her daughter, so she leaves Marcus, whose leg is still really badly wounded, obviously, and the newborn baby at the foundry to go and fetch medical supplies from the town. Now, during this time, obviously, like, there's this little can of oxygen that keeps the baby alive when the baby has to be put in a box so that it doesn't scream and attract attention. And And again, this comes into play later on, obviously. Marcus goes on a little kind of explore around the foundry, quite why we're not sure, but he comes across the corpse of Emmett's wife, who's on like a medical bed surrounded by lots of pictures and things. He is obviously quite startled by this, and he alerts one of the creatures who comes to look for him. He manages to make it back down into the hiding place, but the creature follows him down into the hiding place, so he has to then lock himself and the baby into the airtight ovens. Except he's knocked the towel off the locking mechanism, which means that it's almost impossible to open again. It's airtight as well, as I mentioned, and they begin to run out of oxygen. They've got this one oxygen tank between them, him and the baby, and it's this horrible Sophie's Choice kind of situation that he then finds himself in that, does he continue to breathe and stay alive, or does he give the baby the oxygen? And it's just, there's this horrific kind of scene that plays out over the next couple of scenes where you're not sure what is going to become of one or both of them. Then we cut away to Emmett and Reagan. They've reached a kind of jetty, a marina of sorts, where there are loads of boats moored up, and they go out to steal or commandeer one of these boats, I suppose, to take it to wherever this nearby island is. But they're attacked by what seem to be kind of, I don't know, like evil humans. Like they're all a little bit, I don't want to say hillbilly-ish, but they're almost kind of zombie-like in their kind of, they're not, they look haggard and ill, and obviously are quite nasty. And they are, so essentially they've got really, like, they're not nice people. They don't want to be caught by these people, but they put a noose around Emmett's neck, and they're going to, lynch him essentially, and kidnap Reagan and take her God knows where and do God knows what to her. However, Emmett decides that this is not the way they're going out, and creates a real noise, kicking one of the feral human people into the water, and just creating a lot of noise. And one of the creatures comes along and slaughters everyone. One of the creatures, however, and he manages to pull a knife from somewhere and cut the rope around his neck and get into the water himself. He's followed by one of the aliens, but that alien can't swim and it drowns, and he realizes that that they can't swim, which is, which kind of backs up the theory that there might be an island and a group of survivors on this island, and that's Reagan's hunch is correct. And so, he manages to, Reagan in the ensuing kind of carnage manages to escape as well. They both manage to get onto a boat, and they do, in fact, row out to an island. And they get onto this island, and they can hear hubbub, like, a community. They approach a village where there's a giant bonfire in the middle of the village, and people just having a nice kind of, they're having barbecues and stuff. And again, this is so jarring because once more we've been, nearly an hour into this film, and again it's a harsh silent place, and they've just been attacked by not just aliens but other people. And now they're at this really kind of, it reminded me of the second or third series of Lost, where all of a sudden there's this other community on the island, and they're having a great time. They're just in these houses and they're having barbecues as well, and they're seemingly not affected by whatever the black smoke monster was, So it was very much like that. The leader of the colony brings them in. They're a bit worried that they're going to be attacked, but these people are friendly. They're living quite a nice life out there. And the leader of the colony reveals that when the government discovered the creatures were unable to swim, the Coast Guard, or the National Guard, moved as many people as they could to the islands off the mainland. But only 2 boats made it to this particular island. There's just it's a nice place to be. Cut back to the foundry, and Evelyn has returned from town with the medicine to help with Marcus's leg, and she realizes that something is very wrong. There's aliens wandering around. The entryway into the kind of the silent part of the foundry has been caved in, and there's an alien wandering around. So she puts on the sprinklers, which obviously causes constant noise. The alien comes up to look for what the source of the noise is, but the noise is all around her. She manages to get very, very close to it and has an oxygen canister and a lighter, or a pistol as well. It's been a long time since I've seen this film. There's a few elements that are a bit hazy. So yeah, that's it. Because there's so much noise going on, this monster is opening its ear hole, and she waits until it gets very close to her before shooting it through the head and dispatching it. She manages to get down to the foundry, the oven that Marcus has accidentally locked him and the baby inside of, and manages to pull them out just in time. They were both very close to suffocating, but there's another alien up there. The 3 of them then hide inside the bunker because she's brought a new oxygen tank with her as well, while the alien is prowling around, just waiting for them to come out. It's essentially a cat and mouse game now. So back at the island, we cut to another boat that has pulled up on the shore, and this one was carrying an alien. Somehow the alien had managed to drift this boat all the way over onto the island where where this colony has set itself up, and it attacks the colonists. Emmett and the colony leader and Reagan take a car and try and lure the alien across the island to where the radio station is, because obviously Emmett and Reagan have told him of their plan. So yeah, he drives the car. They lure the creature after them. They get there. As they stop the car and get out and have a bit of an argument about what's going to happen next, the alien kills the colony leader as well, leaving Emmett and Reagan to run inside the radio station. It also breaks in with them, and then it's a kind of stalkery kind of scene, if you like, where there's an alien prowling the corridors. It's between where they need to be and the broadcast room of the radio station, and there's a really tense bit where Emmett tries to sneak Reagan in through a window, and there's all these kind of things that could be knocked off a table or could cause her to trip and break her neck. It's just it's so tense, but it's eventually she manages to get in there. He gets gored a little bit by this alien, but she gets in there and manages to plug her cochlear implant in through the room speakers. It incapacitates the creature. Obviously, they don't like massive sounds. And then she rams a rod right through its head, killing it. Back at the foundry at the same time, the remaining alien in the foundry discovers the family, but Marcus picks up or realizes that this transmission is being made by Reagan, and so he takes his headphones out of the radio and cranks the volume right up to 11, which enables him to shoot the creature as well. So he saves the day there. And effectively, this is where the film ends, with Reagan leaving her hearing aid connected to the radio station's microphone, which means that this tone is constantly being broadcast to anywhere where this radio signal can be picked up and used by others to fight back against the aliens. And that's the end. There's no reconciliation, Emily Blunt's character and the boy, they don't meet back up with the daughter again. There's nothing to say that anyone except Reagan is left alive on this little island after that rampage by the alien. So again, it's kind of open to what happens next. Perhaps they'll make it a trilogy. I'm not entirely sure. Who knows? But yeah, I can tell you that again, it definitely is as good, if not slightly better, I guess, because of all the extra intrigue and world building that goes on than the first one. I still think the first one's probably, because it was so different. It was so, it's so kind of original, I suppose, at the time, where the whole point of the film is silence and the soundtrack is just absolutely, there's just nothing on the dial for such long stretches of time. This one kind of added to it in a way, but yeah. I mean, what I'm reading here now actually is that there is going to be a spin-off based on the original idea, which is scheduled to be released in March 2023, and that actually in May of this year, Emily Blunt has said that John Krasinski has had an idea for a third installment in the main trilogy. So yeah, it looks like we're in for more. And if they do, if they're so involved in it that actually, I believe that this will be something they continue to do and do well. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. Let me know what you thought of it if you've seen it. Get in touch on the Patreon, obviously, when this goes out on the main feed, which will be fairly soon. Then reach out and let me know what you thought of it. Now, on to Black Widow, Marvel's Black Widow. Again, another one of those projects that was kind of affected by COVID, put back, much as Quiet Place 2 was, in actual fact. However, this was Marvel's big kind of try to get everyone back into the cinema event, except it was also put on Disney Plus at the same time for premium. So you could watch it at home for X amount of dollars or pounds or whatever, rather than go to the cinema, which, as we all know, caused a lot of issues with, Scarlett Johansson suing Disney because she feels like she lost out on a bunch of profits because that was part of her deal in her contract, to get a percentage of the profits of the box office takings, which were obviously affected by the fact that it was released during a pandemic and also the audience was given the choice whether or not to go to see it at the cinema or not. And obviously the profits made by Disney Plus are not box office. So all that. Yeah. So, and you know, she's won, and she's managed to kind of, you know, offset that, I'm sure now, and everyone's happy as far as I'm aware. However, let's talk about the film. In 1995, a super soldier. Well, no, in 1995 we open with David Harbour's character, and also Rachel Weisz and their children in a small town, which really does look like Hawkins, Indiana, from the Stranger Things TV show, which obviously David Harbour is in as the sheriff. And that really like threw me for a loop, because it looked like the exact same town that they filmed that TV show in, and then he's in this film, and it was all very strange. But anyway, there's this family. They're in, you know, this typical kind of suburban environment. David Harbour drives back home from work. The family are all sitting down to a meal. He comes in, has something, you know, to say to his wife, and everything goes a bit kind of strained and a bit like the atmosphere changes. It gets a bit tense. They then have to pack up. The whole family has to pack up and leave because, you know, something has happened and their cover has been blown. Effectively, they are Russian spies, and they're operating in the US for some reason, but they've been rumbled. They've stolen SHIELD information, and that's probably why they've been rumbled, let's face it. They escape just about. They go to some tiny little airstrip and get in a broken down old plane, and then it is revealed that David Harbour's character is a super soldier. He's got superpower, like super strength, and all the rest of it. He manages to kind of, as the plane is taking off, to kind of dispatch with the SHIELD agents and their vehicles, as well as then manage to get onto the plane as it takes off onto the wing of the plane, so that they escape. They go to Cuba, where their boss, General Dreykov, who is played by Ray Winston, doing a Russian accent, which why do people insist on casting actors who cannot do accents other than their own? I don't get it. Every third or fourth word sounds a bit Russian because he rolls his R's a bit, but the rest of it, he just sounds like Ray Winston. Yeah, very, very odd. It wasn't overly impressed. In fact, I wasn't 100% sure it was him, because he was hidden behind some moustache and a hairpiece and some glasses, but it sounded like Ray Winston, and I was like, oh, I don't know. But then it turns out definitely it is Ray Winston. And they give him a lot of monologuing to do later in the film, and it's just awful. But he has Natasha and her sister, who is the Florence Pugh character, but at this point they are not the Florence Pugh character. Yelena, that's it, Yelena. And it turns out that this is not actually a real family. This is just two young girls who were in line to become assassins, and a Russian super soldier and a Black Widow herself, Rachel Weisz's character. As they land, and David Harbour's character Alexei gives General Dreykov the intel, Natasha and Yelena are taken away and put in the Red Room for training. This is this notorious Red Room where the girls' ovaries are removed and they are taught to become killing machines, essentially. Years later, Natasha obviously defects from the Black Widow program into S.H.I.E.L.D. After a mission in Budapest goes wrong. Effectively, something happens. One of the widows has got some strange red mist thing that happens, and yeah, it seems to kind of put her into a fugue state or something. Then we come up to 2016. Now, obviously, the Black Widow character is dead. Like, that's not a spoiler. She died in Endgame as the sacrifice for the Soul Stone. So we kind of know that what's happening. This is a kind of prequel which kind of explains where she was during or after Captain America: Civil War and Age of Ultron, I think. So 2016, she's running away after the events of Age of Ultron, where the Sokovia Accords have been violated. She escapes from Thaddeus Ross, which is William Hurt's character, flees to a safe house in Norway, where she's put by some British agent. We're not quite sure who he works for, if I'm honest. So it wasn't. No, it was. Then it was Yelena is on a mission somewhere and kills a rogue former Black Widow, but is squirted with this red mist thing. And that kind of opens her eyes. It kind of means that, yeah, she is no longer... somehow the widows are all kind of under some sort of mind control thing which makes them obedient, and this red mist frees them from that. So she kind of wakes up and realizes that, you know, they're being played effectively. They're being used as pawns, mindless automaton type characters that go out and assassinate people for whoever it is at the top, probably General Dreykov. So what she then does is get a sample of this antidote, the mind control agent and its antidote, and sends it to Natasha, hoping that she can get the Avengers to free the other widows, and then she goes into hiding. Now, Natasha has got these vials in her car, but they have a tracker on them. Of course they've got a tracker on them, and she's attacked by this fully suited up machine, who knows? I mean, those of you who do know, it's the Taskmaster, and Taskmaster's ability is that, I mean, because the Taskmaster was, in fact, I can't remember the original character's name, but the Taskmaster can watch how people fight and mimic them exactly. So there ensues a fight between two people who are completely even and almost like mirror images of each other. So no one's getting the upper hand, really. But eventually Taskmaster beats Romanoff and steals the vials back. Romanov realizes from a note that was left in there that they were from her sister in Budapest. She then goes there. They have a bit of a Barney where they attack each other. It's clear that there's no love lost between the two of them after so many years apart. And because obviously, you know, Natasha is a traitor to the cause, and Yelena is angry about that. However, after they kind of stop fighting, Yelena reveals that Dreykov is in fact in charge of the Black Widow program, and that the Red Room is still active and pumping out Black Widows all the time. As she kind of declares this, a set of Black Widows and Taskmaster attack them, but they're evaded. Natasha and Yelena manage to get out of there, and they meet up with this English agent guy who appears to be in a line of kind of procuring military grade equipment. In this case, a rusty, broken down old helicopter, which the two sisters use to go and break their father, David Harbour, out of prison, so that they can, you know, learn where this Dreykov is, because he's the only person that they can think of who would know, because obviously he was in league with them all those years ago. This is quite an interesting scene in that, you know, David Harbour is getting tattooed. He breaks some guy's arm in an arm wrestling contest. He's still, even though he's out of shape and bearded and schlubby, he's still double hard and can beat anyone in that place. He gets an earpiece fed through to him through the mail from the two daughters, the two sisters. He proceeds to break out with their help, except that they accidentally set off an avalanche. And because obviously this high security prison is in the middle of Siberia or something, that then, you know, not only is he against the other inmates and the prison guards, he's also in a race against time to get out, while tons and tons of snow is hurtling down the mountain towards the prison. Eventually they break him out, and they fly the helicopter back towards St. Petersburg, but they run out of fuel and they crash. Lots of bickering ensues. They all fall back into their old kind of familial habits, where he's the father but is a bit rubbish. They're the bickering daughters, and they go towards a farm where Rachel Weisz's Black Widow, Melina Vostokov, has been living, raising pigs and teaching them to be smart. Mind control pigs. She is obviously using the same kind of chemical compound to be able to mind control pigs in the same way that Dreykov is mind controlling the widows, and she demonstrates this by when they're all inside at the dinner table trying to kind of talk through the past and what they're going to do about things, and how they're going to deal with this whole Dreykov situation. She commands a pig to stop breathing, and it then sits down and starts asphyxiating, which is really quite dark. But eventually she manages, she commands it to begin breathing again and leave. Odd scene. But yes, so they're all kind of having to kind of heal old wounds while also trying to come up with some sort of plan to get back at Dreykov. and they all splinter into their own little worlds. Yelena goes to her room, and eventually Alexei goes in there and kind of tries to make up for the fact that he was a crap dad and wasn't in fact their dad, and then left them to go back to the Red Room and be turned into these monsters. They sing American Pie to each other in kind of cod Russian accents. All good fun. Whereas Natasha goes off on her own, leaving Rachel Weisz to kind of wander around her own house. Then you find out that Rachel Weisz's character has alerted Dreykov that Natasha and Yelena are there, because obviously Yelena is also on the run from the Black Widows now, as well as Natasha being a double, well, not a double agent, but a defector. So agents turn up at the house to take them away. They fire tons of they fire something like 8 or 9 darts of tranquilizer into Alexei, who falls over. It's quite funny. Yeah, so they're all captured and taken to this floating aerial facility, which is where the Red Room is now. It's not a physical location, it just floats in the sky, which is very kind of steampunky. And I suppose, it makes sense. There are those helicarriers in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but this is a little bit more kind of Captain Scarlet. A floating military base where no one leaves. What happens then is that Rachel Weisz's character frees David Harbour's character and Florence Pugh's character from their restraints, while dressed as, this is quite confusing, because you think that Scarlett Johansson's character is doing this where Rachel Weisz has gone up to see Dreykov, except that it's not. Dreykov sees right through the disguise, and reveals that, unmasks Rachel Weisz's character as Natasha Romanoff, and then brings the Taskmaster inside. And it turns out that Taskmaster is Dreykov's daughter, who was badly scarred and injured in the bombing in Budapest. That is the thing that really haunts Scarlett Johansson, that she killed an innocent girl to try and get this Dreykov character. And so, yes, Dreykov had to put technology in her head that made her the perfect soldier. Obviously, it turns out that the two have switched faces. There's some technology in Rachel Weisz's house on the farm that allowed them to switch faces. It's all very Mission Impossible. So it's Rachel Weisz that's freeing the rest of the family, while Natasha Romanoff is up there with Dreykov. She finds out that there's this thing that's happened with Dreykov's daughter, who she thought she'd killed, and that's been haunting her ever since. She then attempts to attack Dreykov, but because of the pheromone, she can't hit him. She lunges at him, but is not able to come within an inch or two of him. And he explains that she's still got some sort of device in her head where there's a pheromone that he wears that means that widows can't hurt him. It's just stupid. It makes no sense. but then she's surrounded by all the other widows. They all come out. They're all under the control of Dreykov's mind control stuff. But she decides that the easiest way to do this is to break her own nose, which severs the nerve in her nasal passageway, meaning that she can then attack him. Taskmaster by this point has been sent down to battle, to kind of kill the rest of the family. There's a big fight scene that goes on down there. And I think then they managed to lock her in a cell somehow. They managed to team up and beat her into the cell and lock her in there. Then they destroy one of the engines of this big aerial facility. Dreykov escapes Natasha Romanoff, and all the other Black Widows then attack her. But Yelena manages to fight her way up into this room and sets the antidote off in the middle of the room, causing all the widows to wake up. She then, Natasha Romanoff manages to kind of destroy Dreykov's computer as the facility begins to kind of fall out of the sky, retrieves 2 more antidote vials and frees the Taskmaster from the cell that she's been locked in, even though she's still dangerous. She's still under the kind of mind control stuff. David Harbour and Rachel Weisz's character escape on a plane, while Yelena takes out Dreykov's aircraft and kills him. Like, she destroys that aircraft. Ray Winston is suddenly dead. Thankfully, we don't have to hear any more of his ridiculous accent. Natasha sees this happening and jumps after Yelena because there's no way of, she'll fall to her death otherwise. There's a parachute, basically. And she manages to catch up with Yelena while she falls. She deploys the parachute. They land gently, despite the fact that this giant space station is falling out of the sky. None of the debris has come through and hit them. Like, there's a thing with Taskmaster as well. She's flying through the sky and they're having a fight in the air. It's all very Marvel-y. The last half hour of any Marvel film is big, incomprehensible fight scenes with too much CG. They all land on the ground. Natasha finds Taskmaster lying on the floor and uses one of the antidote vials on her, waking her up. And she apologizes for all the pain that she's caused, and maybe one day, they can team up or something like that. Maybe, I don't know. So Taskmaster wanders off into the distance. Romanoff gives the last vial to her sister, along with the locations of the other still mind-controlled widows, so she can find and free them all. The family all get together one last time and say goodbye to Natasha because S.H.I.E.L.D. have arrived on the scene. And effectively, the family then, Yelena, Alexei and Melina all fly off in a Quinjet. They all disappear to go after and free the other widows. With the other widows as well, they take all the kind of newly awakened Black Widows with them to teach them better ways or something. I don't know. Then essentially Natasha then goes off to join Captain America and free the rest of the Avengers who are in prison on the raft, and that's where we come back in on one of the later Marvel films, so that's why she wasn't around for a couple of them, and then suddenly came back in Infinity War, I want to say. As ever, there are post-credit scenes. And that is, the big one, I guess, is that Yelena then is visiting Natasha Romanoff's grave, because obviously she's dead. The grave is in the middle of nowhere, seemingly. It didn't seem to be in an actual graveyard. So not quite sure what that was all about. She's standing there, she's paying her respects. And then Valentina Allegra de Fontaine turns up. And this is the character that was introduced in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. She's kind of recruiting new agents for things. She kind of she was yeah, it's Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character who was recruiting the US agent at the end of that, John Walker's character, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So she turns up. She's a character that's only been in the TV shows until now. She's now on one of the main MCU things. But she's setting up another TV show here. She basically says to Yelena that it was Clint Barton who was the reason that Black Widow died, and is like, right, I know where he is, so I can tell you where he is, so you can go and kill him. So I would expect, I think the new the Hawkeye TV show on Disney Plus is going to be coming in the next couple of months, and I would imagine then that Florence Pugh's Yelena will show up in that as a main antagonist, I assume. And then maybe they find out that they're being played. I'm not sure. It's going to be interesting to see where that goes. However, what I would say about the film Black Widow is that it's entirely middle of the road. It's got a ridiculous villain with a stupid accent and almost too easily overcome. Like it's pure. It's not as bad as Thor: The Dark World, but it's certainly not much better either. Possibly one to, it doesn't need to even exist. That's the problem. Like, the fact of the matter is that the main character is dead anyway before this film even takes place. So you're actually watching an episode of something that happened between movies. It's kind of an addendum. It's an appendix of a film. And really what I think should have happened is that she got her own film that really pushed the narrative forward rather than filled in a few gaps. It's the one area where Marvel has kind of lost out to DC, really. DC had the Wonder Woman film, and that was pretty damn good, and actually pushed, a story forward, whereas this one, like I say, is more of an addendum. One character's last hurrah, if you like. Admittedly, it introduced Florence Pugh into the MCU, and that's a great thing. She's brilliant, and clearly will become the next Black Widow. But yeah, it just should have come out a few years back while the character was still alive and actually meant something, is what I feel about it. Good, but not great. But even like the worst Marvel films are better than most other films. So, it's damning with faint praise, I guess. But yeah, certainly not up to the high standards that we expect. Anyway, get in touch with me either on the Patreon or when this goes out on the main feed, and let me know what you thought of Black Widow. Red Widow? No, Black Widow. Yeah. Let me know. We'll have a chat about it. Maybe I've got some things wrong. Maybe I've forgotten some things that you guys are screaming into here with. Again, like I say, this film, I saw it in July, so that's a good 3 months ago now. I've not watched it since. Perhaps I should have done, but it's one of those things. If it isn't anywhere but here, if we're not talking about things we're not 100% sure on. Now, finally, on this episode, I'm going to be talking about the most recent film, which is Free Guy, with Ryan Reynolds and Jodie Comer, among others. Excuse me. I've been talking for a long time, all on one-on-one. This, even though it only came out a few, like I say, in September sometime, it's already available on Disney Plus and on Blu-ray. So this is the most recent one. It came out, very recently, probably the end of September, the beginning of October, I think. So it's or maybe it came out at the end of August, sorry. So it's been out a while. I didn't see this in the cinema. I did see this on Disney Plus. So yeah, that's naughty of me. I didn't go, but there was just a lot going on at the time, and I decided that it wasn't really one that I was definitely going to see. It was one that if I got around to it, I was going to go and see, but I wasn't too bothered if I didn't, because I wasn't 100% sure. What I do like about this is it's completely its own thing. It's not based on a comic book. It's not a sequel. It's not a reboot. It's a new thing. And essentially what it is that Guy, Ryan Reynolds' character, is a non-playable character in a video game called Free City, which is like a kind of Grand Theft Auto-y type game where you're playing and you take on missions, and generally you can do what you want in this world. So it's interesting. His character is a bank teller. He wakes up every morning, says hello to his fish, puts on the same set of clothes, goes out to work, meets his friend who is a cop, or he's a security guard at the bank. They go get coffee, they walk to work together. They then get held up multiple times a day as players come into the game and do the particular mission in which they are held up, or they hold up the bank in which Guy and his security guard friend get held up in. And his name is Buddy as well, so his buddy is called Buddy. Now, what's interesting here is that after a few goes through, you kind of see it. It's like a Groundhog Day type thing. He can get killed, he gets shot, and then he wakes back up again, and the day starts all over again, because that's how computer games work. Especially, I suppose, for non-playable characters who can get, bumped off at any time, but then you just restart the game and there you are again. You respawn. However, one day he's talking about wanting a little bit more from his life. He feels like he's constantly kind of going over and over, and he comes face to face with a player. You can tell that the players are avatars of people playing the game, because they've got sunglasses on. Anyone with a pair of sunglasses is a player. All the NPCs don't have glasses. That's what sets them apart, and that's how you know that you're not one of the people controlling things. You're just someone fulfilling a role, I guess. He comes face to face with a player who's walking down the road, singing a song that he loves, and he falls head over heels in love with her and wants to find out who she is. He tries to catch up with her, and he dies. However, he wakes up the next day with this woman in his head. He remembers her, and he essentially tries to go find her. in the real world, the girl, Molotov girl, is being played by someone called Millie Rusk, who is Jodie Comer. Her and her ex-partner, they possibly had a kind of romantic relationship that may not have been reciprocated, but they were both video game programmers. His name is Walter, and he's played by Joe Keery, who is probably best known as being Steve from Stranger Things, the kind of long-haired, meek-ish, slightly geeky guy who ends up working in the ice cream parlor in series 3. They together had made this game called it was like an open world kind of thing, which it was a game, but you didn't really take part in it. You just watched a world evolve, and it had its own kind of AI engine. That means that life could effectively kind of, it was called Life Itself. And they developed it to just be this kind of almost like an art project. It was an independent thing that they come up with themselves, but this giant conglomeration called Tsunami bought their artificial intelligence code from them and used elements of it in the game to make it more realistic, but they kind of shelved the Life Itself game. They kind of deleted the main part of this. Now, Jodie Comer's character is quite upset at Joe's character for, essentially selling out and working for Tsunami as a developer, but he sees it as a way of like safeguarding the brilliant work that they did on their Life Itself game. Back inside the game, Guy suddenly kind of takes charge of his programming, and while being held up one day by a player, he disarms this player and kills them. And it's pretty funny. Like, obviously the avatars are these huge hulking brutes who are all tough and stuff, but actually the film cuts back to the bedrooms in which the children playing these games are, super nerdy, or just a group of girls hanging out together just trying to do the most heinous shit possible. And yeah, that kind of stuff is quite interesting, because again, it kind of deconstructs the kind of troll-like behavior, because they're hiding behind an avatar that is nothing like them, which is a lot of what internet troll behavior actually is, I guess. But yeah, so he blows away this player and takes their glasses, which allows him to see what the players see, which is all the kind of power-up points, shops, places where you can get money, level missions and all sorts of things like that he becomes aware of them when he's got the glasses on. It's a little bit like what's the film with Obey? Christ, people are going to be shouting at me. Man looks something up on the internet. They Live. That's the job. Where, he discovers a pair of sunglasses, Rowdy Roddy Piper, which shows the way it really is. This is kind of like that, which is quite a nice little homage. So yeah, he decides to track down Molotov Girl, and now that he has got access to the game, he upgrades his he buys a pair of shoes that allow him to jump really high for 3 or 4 jumps or whatever it is. It's then he's noticed by players of the game, and it's reported to Tsunami, who then set some of their software guys on to the task of finding this glitched out character and removing him. So you've got these people who designed the game go into the game dressed as like a rabbit and a cop, and they try to erase Guy, get him to stop acting in a way that NPCs shouldn't act. They fail. He manages to escape, and he actually ends up meeting Molotov Girl at her kind of hideaway. It's got all her like weapons and vehicles and stuff in it. She assumes that he is a player because he's wearing glasses, but can't quite figure out why he's so naive. And then she realizes that he's a novice player. He's on level 1 and she's on like level 300 and something. And she basically is like, if you want to help me, then you need to get up to level 100. Most players obviously level up by doing missions in which they're kind of destroying things, robbing banks, all that kind of thing. Guy is a good guy, and he doesn't want to do bad things to people because he's a non-playable character. He knows what it's like to be held up and shot and stabbed and all sorts of things. So what he does is goes out and tries to do good things. So when he sees players robbing other people, he stops them and he starts leveling up. And eventually there's a whole kind of montage where he's, getting better and better at being good, and stopping players, and he levels up to 100 anyway. And he quickly becomes this phenomenon in the game that's being reported on, all the different YouTube reactors channels and all this kind of thing, as a blue shirt guy, because that's his character's skin, if you like. So yes, Guy then helps Molotov Girl get into like a place where there's some information that she's trying to get. She's in there to try and find, really, because this Molotov Girl is obviously Millie, who is one half of the people that invented the Life Itself game. She's after the code, so she finds a bit of the game where the code is being kept, and so Guy helps her get in there and get hold of the code, except they fail. Which makes them respawn outside the area. There's a part in it where they then Guy then asks for a kiss off her character, but she's like, there's no button for that. But the characters do, which freaks Millie out because she's like, this shouldn't be happening because that's not a mechanic in the game. So she realizes then that Guy is a self-aware character, and that actually he himself has part of the artificial intelligence code in him, because he is evolving and becoming almost self-aware, because that's what their AI engine was designed to do. It was designed to allow the characters in their game to evolve. However, there ensues a kind of romantic element where Guy falls in love with Millie's character. And Millie goes to Joe and kind of, says, look, this blue shirt guy, he really is like part of our game. He's an NPC. He's not a player. He's part of the game, but he's gained self-awareness, which is, it's it's astounding. It's basically they realize that what they've done is created artificial life essentially inside this game, and that is theirs, and they should be able to, you know, reap the benefits of this because it came from their particular coding. So Joe agrees to help Millie retrieve the code before Free City is wiped from the servers to make way for the second game in the series, Free City 2. Now, all the while, it was said that the second game would be backwards compatible with the first game, but actually what's happened is that Tsunami, the boss of Tsunami, who is played brilliantly by Taika Waititi, is basically out for himself at this point and is going to wipe everything. He's going to make all the people who subscribe to the original game resubscribe to this one. You know, it's all a big cash grab, basically. But it does mean that when Free City 1 is wiped, so is the artificial intelligence code that they own, and effectively Guy will be reverted to some crap NPC if he's even in the next game at all. It turns out that Guy's character is quite well, I'll get there. When Millie decides to tell Guy the truth, Guy becomes frustrated with his reality and basically decides not to see her again. He storms off and goes and finds his friend Buddy. And he has a heart-to-heart with Buddy, and Buddy's really upbeat. He can sense he doesn't. He's also an NPC, and he's happy with his lot in life, which is to wake up every day, go to the bank, and get held up. But like, things could be worse. There's always good things out there, and you know, there's, you know, maybe there's more to the kind of daily grind than Guy is seeing. And he kind of talks Guy round, and it's quite a touching thing because it's all about kind of free will versus, you know, whether is there free will, is there not? Is there an ordained path for people? Is there not? You know, and it's quite a deep thing for this quite frothy knockabout comedy to kind of deal with, and that's another reason that I quite like the film itself. It's dealing with big issues in an interesting way, or deep philosophical issues, should I say, in an interesting way. And it's doing it through the prism of computer games, and it's you know, where does the virtual world end and the real world begin? It's much deeper than I think, you know, on the surface it could be misconstrued. So. But there's only a couple of days left until the new game comes out. So Guy's gone AWOL. Millie and Joe can't find him. So time is running out. So essentially, Buddy and Guy go back to try and get the artificial intelligence code for Millie. They break into where this stash is, and it turns out that the player who owns this stash is a fan of Blue Shirt Guy and just gives him the code. But he wants Guy to do some stuff for his YouTube channel, which obviously Guy doesn't understand because he doesn't know what YouTube is. And again, interesting, weird kind of gamey stuff happens. I guess if you're a fan of those kinds of YouTube channels, it makes more sense to you than it does to me, but you know, I get it, but not really. Guy's continued popularity threatens the launch of the second game, and Taika Waititi's character is not a fan of this. He's trying to cash in on the popularity of the character Blue Shirt Guy by creating a new kind of souped up version of that character, but now he's like, nah, this is not going to happen. Like, people are going to expect Blue Shirt Guy to be in Free City 2, and he's not going to be there because he's a fucking NPC. He's not, you know, he's not supposed to be there. So he decides to reboot the game, which is not the best thing for someone to do, because it basically means, I mean, this guy is, he's a narcissist, but he doesn't seem to realize that, rebooting an entire game would erase people's saves and all the rest of it. But anyway, what it also does is temporarily remove Guy's memories. So he wakes back up again, he says hello to his fish, he goes out to work. But Millie finds him on the way to work and tries to talk him round to it. They discover that, in the meantime, they've discovered that this Life Itself game is still in the code somewhere, and you can only see it via reflections. So they just need to find a way off the island on which Free City lives to the island where Life Itself is, behind a big kind of mirror or something. It's hidden. So she tries to, remind Guy of what it is that they're trying to do. Guy has no idea who she is. So then she decides to kiss him, even though obviously that's not a mechanic in the game. But that seems to put some connections together in Guy's head. Then he remembers everything. So they decide to travel to the island. However, Taika Waititi's character is watching this, has realised that someone in his corporation is helping them get to this island where Life Itself is, and he decides to get the coders in the company to kill them by basically throwing everything that the game has got at them. But all his attempts are kind of rebuffed by Joe's character, who is kind of in there rerouting the code himself and helping Guy and Millie make their way to the seafront, and then building a giant bridge out to the edge of the area in which they can exist, I guess. So yeah, they get to this point. There's an interesting point where Guy gets all the NPC characters together in a quiet part of the map and tells them to just go on strike. They don't come out. And so, his self-awareness is catching through all the other NPCs, even if they're not entirely sure that they should be doing this because it's against their coding or whatever. And that's quite interesting. All of a sudden, there's only players in the game. There's no one for them to wantonly kill or hold up or take hostage or whatever. So that's quite interesting, seeing the way that these children react when their actions, their darkest desires aren't able to be played out. So all the NPCs kind of gather with Guy at the end of this bridge that has just appeared, that leads out to nothing, seemingly. Taika Waititi's character decides to send in the slightly unfinished copy of Blue Shirt Guy, who is this ultra muscular brute of a character who beats the crap out of Guy. Guy tries all sorts of things, including he has a Captain America shield and there's a brief cameo from Chris Evans in there. Because obviously it's a Disney Plus thing. It's Disney, so they can use the Avengers. He even brings out a lightsaber because that's part of Disney as well. There's a Hulk fist that he uses to try and fight back. But in the end, the one thing that does win the fight is that Guy puts the sunglasses on the dude, which distracts him. He goes off wandering around trying to catch all the random things that are floating around, like health bars and money and what have you. So then Guy goes across this bridge, which is made of a fallen skyscraper, out towards the boundaries of Free City with Buddy, because Millie has been kicked out of the game, I think, at this point. So they just need to get to the end of the bridge to get to kind of open up a portal to the Life Itself island. But of course, Taika Waititi's character isn't going to let them do this, so he destroys the bridge by smashing the game servers with a fire axe, because obviously that's how you destroy small parts of a game. You go down into a server room and take an axe to some computers. But, bits of the game do start fading away, as do the bits of the bridge as well, and Guy and Buddy are running towards the edge of the map, while their escape route back to Free City is being destroyed behind them. Buddy gets disintegrated on the way through, but Guy just about gets to the end of the bridge before it completely, before the whole game is destroyed, taking almost all of the inhabitants of Free City with it. Taika Waititi's character is getting down to like the very final couple of servers, where Millie kind of breaks into the server room and tells him that she'll let the lawsuit that she's been holding over his head about this artificial intelligence drop, and she just wants her intellectual property back. She wants her code back, and he can keep all the profits to the game. Obviously, Taika Waititi, he's obsessed with money. He doesn't understand why she would want to stop, the quest for repayment. So he's like, yeah, of course, I'll take the money, sure. Obviously, without the code and also the fact that he's destroyed most of the original game, the launch of Free City 2 is not met with critical acclaim. And Taika Waititi's character is vilified by the media and arrested for theft and criminal damage. So Joe and Millie release Free Life using their recovered code, including Guy and the other Free City characters. They set up in their flat, in their apartment, and they bring their game to life properly and put it out there, which means that, life itself is a thing now, but also Guy is there because he found the island in the first place. There's all these random, half horse, half men wandering around. There's unicorns, there's dragons, there's all sorts of random natural crap. But also, all the inhabitants of Free City, all the NPCs are transferred over into life itself, including the dude. Obviously, this also means that they're setting up a world in which players don't really participate. They just observe. So Guy and Millie have to say goodbye, but Guy, kind of in saying goodbye, reveals the truth in that Joe has always been in love with her, and that's why he created characters like Guy who felt this way about her. So, there's a real world thing that happens there. Millie leaves the game. She and Joe get together, and meanwhile Guy reunites with the dude and Buddy, and they begin to live. They are left to live out their own lives and evolve. And it's actually describing it. It's a much deeper story than you might believe. I just thought that this was going to be some, I wasn't sure of the plot of it. I wasn't sure of what it was all about going into it, and I got a lot out of it. I was really intrigued. I mean, it's talking my language anyway with video games. I'm not like an avid gamer, and I'm certainly not someone who watches people play games. I like to play them myself, and even still, I don't really get that much time to play on them anymore, but it's something that I'm familiar with, and it's just interesting to use those dynamics and those storytelling methods to tell a story that involves kind of self-realization, determination, whether life is yours to do with what you want, or whether there's no real freedom. It's a really interesting story, and like I say, it's made more interesting based on the fact that it's not taken inspiration from or not directly based on anything else. It's its own original idea. And that is to be commended, I think, in these days where everything's being rebooted, or like everything's a sequel, or it ties into another universe, or, you know, it's refreshing to see that there are still films that can be made that are broad, but are also asking these questions and kind of putting interesting thoughts out there into the world. It's yeah, I think it really worked, and apparently Disney want a sequel to it. I don't understand how you could do a sequel, but I'm sure they'll find a way to do it. I kind of hope that they don't, because it's nice to have a standalone thing that has an original-ish idea, but certainly presents it in an original way. And yeah, I mean, Ryan Reynolds does his Ryan Reynolds thing. He's very much a Ryan Reynolds, like you couldn't imagine many other people doing this particular thing. Taika Waititi is brilliant as the kind of narcissistic video game head. Jodie Comer continues to add accents to her ridiculous range of accents. I hope that this, obviously after the success of Killing Eve, this seems to be the vehicle that's going to get her into Hollywood proper. And yeah, long may it continue, I think. Yeah, all round really quite good. So at the end of this episode, I've got A Quiet Place Part 2, which was excellent. I really loved that. Black Widow, which is bog standard, like mid to bottom tier of the Marvel cinematic universe, yet introduces at least one brilliant character in Florence Pugh, who I look forward to seeing. And then if she's going to be in the Hawkeye TV series as well, that makes me look forward to that even more. She really stole the show there, even though the film itself was not brilliant. And then you've got this, which was a real surprise. Free Guy came out of nowhere, really. It's not based on anything. It's a completely new and original idea, or at least a way of portraying that idea. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I think that, you know, if you've not taken a chance on it, it's on Disney Plus. So if you've got access to that, then it's free, essentially. So yeah, give it a go. It's good fun. It's kind of brain off stuff, but there's also a deeper meaning behind it as well. So yeah, by all means, give it a go. And also, as I've said at the end of the two previous films that I've talked about, get in touch with me either on the Patreon or when this goes live on the main feed as well. I'd love to hear what you thought of it. And again, if there's anything that I've missed out, that I'm sure there are, let me know, and we can have a chat about it. So yeah, until next time, I've been Tom, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye.